The courtroom was silent in the way disaster zones are silent after the impact. Nothing moved, yet everything vibrated beneath the skin. Riot stood at the center, wrists resting against the polished table, posture still but pulsing with restrained chaos. Cameras pointed toward him like narrow, unblinking eyes. The gallery was filled with faces that once toasted beside him at charity galas and garden dinners, people who used to greet his family name with warmth. Now their expressions carried only speculation, fear, and a touch of curiosity that tasted cruel. A single object sat on the evidence display board. A small, lavender jacket. Arya's jacket. Riot's stare locked onto it with the kind of intensity that held the world still. The air carried faint traces of perfume and stress and polished wood. His father sat in the second row, frozen, a statue carved from disappointment and disbelief. His mother's hands trembled inside gloves she never removed in public. Someone in the gallery whispered Caleb's name. Someone else inhaled sharply, as if the sound itself was scandal. Riot's jaw shifted. The memories surged. Not here. Not under fluorescent lights. Not in front of strangers analyzing pain like spectacle. The night of his father's birthday returned. The golden garden lights, the quiet music, warm laughter rising between clinking glasses. Riot remembered the scent of grilled rosemary chicken, the soft glow of lanterns swaying in evening breeze, the sight of Arya racing barefoot through grass, her giggles threading through the music like a melody the world didn't deserve. Caleb had been there on the lawn, leaning back on his elbows beside her, time missing, hair messy, eyes soft, with that gentle ease everyone trusted without thinking twice. Caleb always made people feel safe. That was the danger. Riot had noticed something that night, small, almost invisible. A hesitation in Caleb's smile when Arya touched his arm, a flicker of something unreadable behind familiar eyes. Riot's breath paused, not fully understanding why. Then the phone in Riot's pocket vibrated, a vibration sharp enough to fracture the evening. The screen glowed with a single name, Mara. Riot stepped away from the gathering, moving toward the shadows between the oak trees where lantern light couldn't reach. His expression didn't break, but something inside him shifted. The music dulled behind him, laughter blurred into background haze. The call connected. Riot's gaze moved back to the lawn. Arya was there, with Caleb. Just the two of them, no one else close. The stillness of that moment carried weight he didn't yet recognize, the kind that changes everything. The night air beneath the oak trees felt colder than it should have, as if the temperature itself recognized the shift before Riot did. Leaves rustled, lanterns swayed, but the world narrowed to the phone against his ear and the distant sound of Arya's laughter drifting across the lawn. Mara's voice didn't stumble, no hesitation, no breath to soften edges. "Where is Arya?" Not a question, a demand shaped by terror that sounded earned, not imagined. Riot's pulse shifted, no longer steady. The lights of the celebration blurred, the warmth evaporating. He stepped out from the shadows, pace slow at first, controlled, every muscle calculated to avoid alarming anyone, especially Arya. The conversation on the lawn continued unaware, gentle gestures, soft laughter. Caleb's expression glowed with that familiar softness people lean toward instinctively.
But Riot's focus tunneled, no longer seeing the brightness of celebration, only the sharp outline of potential danger. He crossed the grass, each step packed with quiet urgency beneath a calm surface that did not break. Arya noticed him first, her face lighting in effortless joy. She ran toward him, small, bare feet brushing dew-kissed blades. Riot lifted her into his arms with practiced familiarity, breathing in the faint scent of shampoo and sun-warm grass. Her tiny hands rested around his neck, trusting, unguarded. Caleb rose slowly behind her, confusion flickering, a question forming in the slight shift of his brow. Not spoken, only implied. Riot offered him no space, no eye contact, no explanation. A silent barrier formed, firm and immovable. Guests continued chatting in their clusters, unaware of the shift in gravity. Riot carried Arya inside the house, steps still smooth, voice low and gentle in tone, but built from steel beneath. He moved through hallways decorated with framed family photos, moments frozen in smiles, laughter, embraces. Yet every image now felt like part of a narrative that might not be what it always appeared. Inside the foyer, Riot lowered Arya to gather her small shoes. She didn't protest, only watched him with trust that weighed heavier now than any judgment the world could hold. Mara's voice remained in his ear, breathing, sharp, controlled, waiting. Riot stepped outside again, carrying Arya toward the car. His father noticed first, rising slightly from his seat, an unspoken question in the movement. But Riot did not break stride. Doors opened, engines started, gravel crunched beneath the tires. The estate receded behind them, the music grew faint, lanterns blurred into small distant orbs. The night closed around the car like a sealed chamber, quiet except for Arya humming softly in the back seat, unaware. Only once distance formed, once the gate closed behind them, once the city lights began to flicker ahead, did Riot finally allow breath to break fully. The call remained open. Mara's voice returned now, lower, carved from something deeper than fear. Do not bring her back there, ever. Silence stretched, heavy and absolute. Riot's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The next words felt like a fracture splitting straight through memory, trust, and blood. This is about Caleb. Before I continue, tell from which place are you watching this story right now. Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The city lights slid across the windshield in broken streaks, painting Riot's face in shifting fragments of gold and shadow. Arya hummed in the back seat, fingers tracing shapes on the glass, unaware of the weight filling the car. Riot drove with steady hands, but inside something churned, slow, heavy, and growing with each passing block. Mara's voice did not shake. It carried the tone of someone who had already seen the worst version of truth and survived enough to speak it aloud. You need to listen, fully. Riot's eyes stayed on the road, but every nerve attuned itself to the voice in his ear. Mara continued, each word paced, chosen, held back until now for a reason. Caleb is being investigated, quietly. No public record, no leaks. Not yet. The city outside blurred into indistinct shapes. A hospital sign, a neon diner window, passing headlights. None of it registered beyond the edges of sound. There were reports, patterns, children, stories that don't surface until years later. And every one of those stories leads back to him. Riot's breath shifted, shallow at first, then settling into something sharper. His grip tightened, leather creaking beneath his fingers. A heat rose in his chest. Not anger, not yet. Something older, more primal. The instinct every parent carries silent inside their bones. Arya kept humming, the soft tune she always sang before sleep. Innocent, unaware. Mara continued. He targets children who trust him, children who look at him the way Arya does. Everything inside Riot stilled. No heat now, only cold. The kind that settles in the marrow, the kind that waits. The car turned onto their street. Porch lights lined the quiet row of homes. Riot parked, left the engine running. His hand rested on the steering wheel for a moment longer before he finally spoke, voice low enough Arya could not hear. What happens now? Mara did not hesitate. You keep her close. Do not let her out of your sight, and do not approach Caleb until you know everything. He is not who your family believe he is. Not anymore. Riot looked back at Arya through the rearview mirror. Her head leaned against the seat, eyes soft, safe, fragile in a world full of things she never needed to see. The porch light blinked once. A movement in the window. Someone inside. Riot frowned. He had not left any lights on.
He lifted Arya from the back seat, quiet, gentle, protective instinct forming a wall around them both. The night air felt too still, too watchful. The front door stood slightly ajar. Not open, not closed, just waiting. Riot stepped forward slowly, crossed the threshold. Arya rested her head on his shoulder. The foyer light flickered once. A single item lay on the floor, placed deliberately in the center of the hallway. Arya's other shoe, the one she had left at the estate. Someone had already been here. The house breathed with an unfamiliar stillness, the kind that didn't belong to a home, but to places where footsteps once were. Riot didn't move at first. The air felt wrong, occupied, disturbed, quietly rearranged. Arya's small hand curled near his collar, fingers settling into the fabric like instinct searching for anchor. Riot crouched, lifting the shoe from the floor. Clean, placed, not dropped. No rush, no panic. Deliberate. Someone had been comfortable enough to stand in this home and take their time. He carried Arya to her room, closing the door without sound. The hallway outside seemed to wait, walls pressing inward, listening. Riot's movements were methodical. He checked the window lock. Secure. Curtains drawn. The night beyond mirrored his own reflection back. Still eyes, sharp edges, breath held just beneath the surface. Arya climbed into her bed without question, exhaustion folding her into blankets. A soft exhale escaped her, the kind children release only when the world has demanded too much from their small bodies. Riot placed one hand on her hair for a brief moment, a vow without words. He stepped back into the hallway. The shoe remained in his other hand. The house opened before him in silence. He moved through rooms with slow, controlled precision. Living room, kitchen, study. Nothing broken, nothing missing. Just a faint shift in the air, like someone had stood still for a very long time, waiting. The framed pictures along the staircase drew his attention. Family vacation in the mountains. Mother's birthday dinner. Caleb holding Arya, her arms wrapped around his neck, joy unfiltered. Riot paused. The photo didn't feel like memory anymore. It felt like evidence. His phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Check the back door. Riot's steps changed now, sharper. He moved to the kitchen, toward the sliding glass door that opened into the backyard. The curtain hung exactly as he had left it earlier in the day, but when his hand brushed the glass, something cold pressed beneath his fingertips. A print, not smudged, clear, an adult's hand, the same faint mud from the estate lawn. Riot's breath lowered in his chest, heavier now. The shoe, the unlocked door, the print, none of them loud on their own, but together they formed a pattern too clean to be accident. Something else caught his eye. A piece of paper, folded once, placed on the counter. Not hidden, not left to be discovered by accident. Riot unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was neat, familiar. Caleb's. You always protected her well. I understand that now. No threat, no apology, no explanation, just acknowledgement. Riot stood in the kitchen beneath the soft hum of the refrigerator, silence settling around him like dust. There was only one reason Caleb would enter this house without taking anything, without leaving chaos, without forcing confrontation. He wanted Riot to know he could. The front doorknob clicked.
Not opened, just turned, once. The quiet kind of knock that didn't need sound to be heard. Riot's shoulders stilled. Someone was on the other side. The doorknob stilled. No movement after the initial turn. Not a knock, not a demand. Just presence. Riot's posture shifted, weight settling through the floor as if preparing for impact. The house surrounding him felt smaller now, walls closing in around one single point of attention. He stepped toward the entryway without hurry. The silence between each step held shape. Something tense, stretched, waiting to snap. Outside the door, no voice, no shuffle of shoes, no forced breathing, just stillness, deliberate and patient.
Riot stopped a single breath away from the door. A memory surfaced. Not soft, not affectionate, not painful. Just clear. Caleb on the lawn earlier, back turned to the sun, smile stretched easy. Arya reaching for his hand. Trust so natural it didn't require permission. The door remained closed. Riot unlocked it, not to invite, to see. The porch light cast a pale circle over the wooden boards, illuminating only emptiness. The walkway stretched quiet toward the street, trees lining the sidewalk swaying with the breeze, too gentle for the tension inside his chest. No footsteps retreated, no car engine, no shadow vanishing behind hedges. Caleb had been there, but not anymore. Riot closed the door again, slower this time. The house regained its stillness, but not its safety. He returned to the kitchen, the note still open on the counter, the handwriting neat, measured, calm. You always protected her well. I understand that now. Understanding implied regret. Regret implied awareness. Awareness implied control. Caleb knew what Mara knew. He knew the investigation. He knew the risk of exposure. And yet, he had come here to show access, to show proximity, to show patience. Riot's jaw tightened with a quietness sharper than anger. Anger could burn out. This was something colder, something that did not rise. It sank, deep, rooted. He took the note and placed it inside a drawer, not to hide it, to keep it close. The hallway to Arya's room stretched long and dim. Riot crossed it and opened her door just enough to see her, blanket pulled to her chin, breath soft and unbroken. Her presence was a world untouched, a small universe still intact. He closed the door again, leaving only a sliver of light. Riot didn't sleep. He sat in the living room as night settled into its quietest hours. The house did not creak, the clock did not tick loud. Outside, the street lay empty, yet the world felt watched. At dawn, the ringing of the phone cut the stillness clean. No caller ID, no hesitation. Riot answered. Mara's voice entered the room like a blade. Caleb disappeared last night. He quit his job, cleared his apartment, everything gone. Riot didn't move. Mara continued. He isn't running. He's preparing. The note on the counter, the silence at the door, the shoe placed gently in the hallway. Every action formed the same message. Caleb didn't intend to escape. He intended to return. Morning light arrived without warmth. The phone call ended, but the weight of it stayed, unmoving. Riot remained still for a long moment, the silence holding shape around him. No shock, no panic, just alignment, pieces falling exactly where instinct always knew they would. Caleb had not entered their lives by chance. Riot left the house before Arya woke. The street outside was washed in early gray, quiet, ordinary to anyone passing through. But ordinary had not belonged to Riot for years. He drove without music, without thought.
the city sliding past in a blur of corners and intersections that remembered him, even if he didn't acknowledge them. Mara waited at the precinct, not in her office, but in the records room. A single file lay open on the metal table. No names on the cover, just a number. Old, archived, purged from the system twice. Riot didn't sit. Mara turned the file toward him. Photos, reports, handwritten witness accounts, dates overlapping the worst years, the years Riot buried beneath new names, new lives, new peace. A house burned down at the edge of a forgotten town, no survivors listed, no bodies recovered. For years it stayed unsolved, not because there were no answers, but because someone made sure answers stayed buried. A small face in a school photo. Unremarkable. Quiet. Eyes that watched everything. Caleb years before his name was Caleb. The file mapped a different identity, a different life, a boy who vanished after the fire. No guardian, no records, just disappearance. But he hadn't disappeared. He had studied, adapted, learned to rearrange his presence so cleanly that people welcomed him without question. Mara spoke, voice low. Caleb wasn't following Arya. He was following Riot. Not for revenge, not for fear, for understanding. The past Riot thought dead had never burned away. It had simply watched from the dark, choosing when to step back into light. Riot's hand rested on the table, not tense, steady. The file contained photographs of the fire's aftermath, a charred doorway, a collapsed staircase.
A small handprint in ash, too precise, too careful. Not left by accident, left as message. Riot closed the file once, not out of refusal, out of recognition. The boy at the center of that fire survived because he learned something Riot once lived by and later abandoned. Remove everything that weakens you, and remember the ones strong enough to walk away. Caleb hadn't been searching for Arya. He had been mapping Riot's life, layer by layer, until he could enter it seamlessly. Not to destroy it, to test it, to see what remained of the man who once walked out of a burning house and never looked back. Mara's voice broke through the quiet. Caleb planned this for years. Riot didn't correct her. Caleb wasn't planning anymore. He was already inside the narrative, already pacing the edges of their lives. The question was no longer why he came. The question was what he believed Riot owed him. Riot stepped away from the table. Caleb did not want a confrontation. He wanted a conclusion. Night came without transition, no sunset, no slow dimming. Just darkness, as if the world decided daylight was no longer needed for the conversation that was about to happen. Riot returned home with the same quiet steps he left with. The house was untouched, lights off, air still. But stillness wasn't peace anymore. It was presence that did not need to reveal itself. Arya slept in her room, door cracked open, just enough for sound and shadow to pass through. He checked the window, locked, curtains drawn. Her breathing was steady, soft, a universe still whole. The living room waited. Riot sat, not armed, not guarded, not preparing, just waiting. The silence folded around him like a second skin. A minute passed, maybe 10. Time didn't measure anything here, only intention did. The back door opened, quiet, unrushed, as though it had always been meant to open at this exact hour. Caleb stepped inside. No threat in his posture, no weapon, no message, just a person who knew the room, the placement of furniture, the echo of the floor under his heel. His presence didn't disturb the house. He matched it. That was his gift. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. The past stood in one body, the future in the other. Only the present needed choosing. Riot spoke first, not with emotion, not with accusation. What do you want? Not asked, stated. Caleb's eyes didn't look away. To know if I was right to survive. The words landed quiet, but they landed with weight. The fire, the loss, the disappearance. Caleb wasn't searching for vengeance. He was searching for meaning. Riot understood, not because he empathized, because once he was the same. Years ago, Riot walked out of his own ending and built something new. Something gentle, something unremarkable on purpose. Caleb never learned how. He survived, but he never learned what to do with survival. Caleb stepped closer, slow, deliberate, stopping just where shadows met. When the house burned, you didn't come back. No accusation, just truth carved too deep. Riot didn't explain. There were no explanations that changed fire into forgiveness. The silence held. Caleb's gaze shifted toward the hallway, toward the small crack of light beneath Arya's door. Not threat, recognition. Something in him softened without breaking. She is the life you chose. Riot didn't deny it. Caleb nodded, small, almost imperceptible, acceptance shaped like defeat. He didn't want Arya. He didn't want to ruin. He wanted the answer to one question. If Riot could move forward, why couldn't he? Riot finally spoke, not to comfort, not to justify. Survival is not the end. You have to build after. Caleb's breath shook once, just once, like something inside released a grip it held for years. Not rage, not heartbreak, grief for a life that never had room to begin. He stepped back, not running, not slipping away, leaving with understanding instead of unfinished need. Riot didn't stop him. The door closed behind Caleb as quietly as it opened. No chase, no fight, no victory, no loss. Just two lives that once began in the same fire, finally taking separate directions. Riot stood, walked to Arya's room, and paused at the doorway. She slept untouched by the weight of the night. He watched her breathe, the steady rhythm grounding, real. The past did not disappear tonight. It simply knew where it no longer belonged. And Riot understood something essential. Protection was not just keeping danger out. It was choosing, again and again, the life worth keeping.